MBA application walkthroughs. My name is Alan, and I'm your host. And it is also my pleasure to present to you Kelsey Kephart. She was a former Columbia Business School admissions officer. Sorry. So she really knows what she's talking about. And she's also the founder of Embark MBA. So she's going to give you just a little taste of what that's like today. Um, we're going to begin with a quick overview of the application and some information that you need to know to be successful. And then we'll go through Q&A afterwards, hopefully around 11:40. And so for everyone in the audience, I just want to make sure that you guys see the Q&A tab on the right side of the screen. It's on the same UI element as the chat tab. Please post your questions there, upvote, downvote. We're going to take the top upvoted questions and be asking them at the end of the session. So again, please use the Q&A tab, not the chat tab, and I'll be posting reminders of that throughout the session. And now I'll turn it over to Kelsey.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone. I can't see you, but I can feel like it's going to be a great session. As Alan said, I'm Kelsey Kephart. I used to be one of the admissions directors at Columbia Business School. But since I left, I've run Embark MBA. I work with applicants, not just for Columbia, but across the top business schools in the US, in Canada, in Asia, in Europe, everywhere. I also am a head of operations in venture capital. So business school consulting is not my full-time gig. Just like my clients, I am in the industry, which I think is kind of my superpower. I'm a boutique firm. It is just me. Any client that I work with, it's me from the time that you meet me all the time you go to business school. In fact, this morning I'm chatting with one of my clients who's going to Kellogg very shortly, and we're chatting about Rivera. So that's a little bit about me. You'll notice I talk fast and I'm pretty casual. So we're going to go through the Columbia application pretty quickly. So if I don't answer something, just like Alan said, use the chat box. Alan, with that, can I start sharing my screen?
Yes, absolutely. Just to add on to that, please post your questions in the Q&A tab if you are there. I'll be taking a look at the chat tab, but the ones that we'll be asking at the end of the session will be in the Q&A tab.
All right, let's kick off. So when you open up the application, you're going to see a quick welcome. What I think people breeze through this, but honestly, there's some helpful information here. Admissions events, so important. Please go to admissions events. They've got a lot of them. Columbia and other schools do a great job at traveling during the summer, having virtual events, having on-campus events. So you got a link here. Visit campus, chat with a current student. My gosh, Columbia does a great job. They have the Hermes Society, not Hermes, Hermes Societies, where current students volunteer their time. It's an email list. Reach out to them. They know what it was like to be in your position, so it's an underutilized resource. So this is just the welcome page. Next, we go to the honor code. This is important. You should read it. Every school has something like this, but this is essentially saying that you will act with integrity throughout this process and while you're a student. Let's go to the application. So Columbia does not mess around. They jump right into your goals. Alan and I were messing around with this. If I click the drop down, you're not able to see it, but the first two questions are your area of academic focus. What are you going to study? Columbia doesn't have majors. It's really a la carte. You pick what you want after the core. So this is where you're saying, what do you want to study? If you're looking to go into marketing, maybe you're choosing marketing. If you want to go into consulting or investment banking, finance, negotiations, click that. There are drop downs. It's not super inclusive, if you ask me. They haven't changed it in years, but just choose the thing that's most relevant. So there's primary focus and secondary focus. And we go down to future experience. Indicate the industry, what you want to work on post MBA. So similar. The first thing is the industry: advertising, arts, consulting. Choose whatever is closest. And then the functional area. So what are you going to be doing? If you're going to be strategic marketing, well, that's kind of strategy, but the functional area is marketing. I find that a lot of clients get nervous about this. It is just a really quick way to organize it. I wish they would put it deeper in the application, but don't stress out about it. Choose what is closest. You will elaborate on your goals further in the essays. Dual degrees. Are you currently enrolled in a graduate program? Obviously, you would click yes. If you are trying to go for another dual degree, JD MBA, seen a DDS MBA, you'll select that. Previous application. Are you a reapplicant? If you are, hit yes, and then you'll fill in, what was the year? Were you waitlisted? What was the decision? When you do this, if you're a reapplicant, it actually changes the essays. So fill this in before you get to the essays if you're an applicant. This is a super important section. I think a lot of people either don't realize it until they're actually submitting their application, but you're here. I'm going to tell you ahead of time. Have you spoken to a CBS representative? Hit yes. And if you have, make note. When you go to events, make note of who is presenting, who you're hearing from. CBS events can have alumni, current students, they can have professors. When you go, if you listen to nothing else they say during the session, when you go to an event, virtual, on campus, traveling, make note of who you're talking to. They want to see this. The second question, do you know any current students? Let's say you hit yes, and you can name these individuals. People get stressed about this too. Again, if you go to an event, write down. And also remember at the very beginning of the session, I said they've got a Hermes club where they've got current students. Reach out to them, friends. It shows that you're super interested. It shows that you're well researched. So please don't sleep on this section. Next up, January consideration. So for those of you who don't know, Columbia has this super unique J-term option. Essentially, you go to school 4 months later than your peers and you do not have a summer internship. You're in school. I always see a couple clients every year who could do J-term, but they prefer August. If for any reason you also want to be considered for J-term, you can hit yes. This doesn't guarantee that you're going to be, considered for that, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility. Of course, the last deadline for J-term this year is in mid-August, so it's a funny little nuance of the application, but if you fit in this box, hit it. Whether or not you've served the military, miscellaneous. This is interesting. Were you ever the subject of a disciplinary action at a prior institution, or have you ever been convicted of a crime? This will not affect your application decision. How funny they say that. It's true, it doesn't. When I was in admissions, there were some people who were convicted of crimes, anything from lots and lots of parking tickets to more serious things. It does not count you out. But when you hit yes for either, you have the option to describe the nature of it, when it happened. If this applies, if either apply to you, please don't rush this, explain it, and then you might want to talk about the learnings since. So if you were in trouble for, hopefully not, but hopefully if you were in trouble for cheating, what have you learned since then? So this application section should be completed pretty carefully. All right, this is just the first page. Let's go on to personal. A lot of this is pretty standard. Your personal, what's your name, your last name. If you have a different name that you want to use or you prefer to be called, put that in there. You don't want them sending an email with the wrong name. Your address, email address, numbers, biographical. A lot of this is quite standard. Citizen information. Hometown, where did you grow up? This is something that we just used to look at. If you grew up somewhere very different, shows that maybe you moved around, you got interesting, so please fill it out. Language information. Please indicate your fluency in languages other than your native language. If you have conversational proficiency in another language like Spanish or French, put it in there. It's kind of fun to read. Here we get to a section that a lot of people get very nervous about. Please don't get nervous. Columbia wants a photo. I get this question every single day. What is Columbia using this for? Honestly, and I can say this from experience, it is just a really nice way to put a face to words on a page. It becomes a little bit more personal. And then the second question is, well, what picture do I choose? Honestly, I've seen all kinds of picture. My guidance for you is choose something you wouldn't be afraid to show your mother. Please don't post a picture of you in a bikini on a beach. You do not have to use a LinkedIn photo, but that's certainly a very nice choice. Sometimes, you have a partner or a dog that you love. Those are fun to look at. I'm not telling you to go adopt a dog and put a picture, but like sometimes it shows a little bit of personality. So don't go bikini on a beach. Don't go, super, super stodgy and formal. Choose something that potentially elicits a little personality, but please don't stress about this photo. They look at it for like 10 seconds. Family. Columbia wants to know sort of a little bit more about you. So your parent 1 information, parent 2 information. If you are someone for whom you are not in contact with your parents or they're unfortunately deceased, you can indicate that here. AdCom looks at this just to see, what's the background you're coming from. So sometimes, and it was pretty frequent while I was at Columbia and then now working with clients, that maybe their parents didn't graduate high school or maybe they have a PhD. It's just rooting. So fill this out. Don't skip it. But again, they're just using this to understand sort of the context of your life. If you were a first generation student, check it. Your marital status. Columbia actually super cares about if you have a partner or a family. They love to welcome them. They actually have a whole Better Halves Club that supports partners and families. And so they actually want to see that. Do you have any children? If you say yes, ages of the children. Again, this is really used to make sure that if you're admitted, they're welcoming your entire family. It's actually quite nice. Relatives, anyone in your family attended Columbia University. So it's not just the business school. So they just sort of want to see, do you have any connection to the school? Oh, last one. Sorry, I almost forgot this. Do you have a partner or relative currently submitting an application to Columbia University? So this includes the business school, but they like to see if both you and a cousin or a partner or a sibling are interested in Columbia. Well, it could be a signal that you're super interested about Columbia, that they might have a better chance of yielding you if you actually are accepted. So if this applies to you, don't be afraid to designate it. Resume. So this is very standard. I have 2 tips for everyone. Please don't submit a 2-page resume. I believe that everyone can get a resume onto 1 page. I believe in you. Utilize Arial, narrow, size 10, increase the margins. Has to be 1 page.
Kelsey, could I ask how bad is a 2-page resume? Because I actually ended up submitting a 2-page resume, but I had basically 2 sections of my career. Essentially, I had one half which was a technical career, and then one half which is a little bit of an artistic career. Are there a little bit of exceptions to that rule, or did I somehow fuck up a little bit?
Shame on you, Alan. It's not the end of the world, but there were times where, as admissions, I was like, did you really need 2 pages? If someone has a 10-year career, I'll give them a little leeway. But honestly, I believe I'm a magician with resumes. I can get anything onto 1 page, but if at all possible, put it onto 1 page. Don't be like Alan. Just kidding, Alan. All right, employment. My gosh, there's a lot of text, but essentially, this is super important. Again, the biggest tip, do not estimate anything, friends. I used to run Rivera for Columbia. Don't estimate. They will be checking this. So if I say add new, will it pop up? Oh, fabulous, it does. So you can enter in 3 jobs. So for those of you who might be career jumpers, you have 6 roles, you can only do the most recent 3. Organization name, where it's located, when you started, and when you ended. So don't estimate this because they will check. They just want to see if you have any gaps. If you have a gap, that's okay. You can explain it in the optional essay, but this is really them getting an accurate career arc. Employment order, put your most recent first, your starting position, your position, your ending position. What type? Full-time, part-time? This is so important. The salary. I can't tell you how many times I had to go over Rivera flags. Do not estimate your salary. Friends, you have tax returns, you have bank accounts. Anytime you leave a job, you should be downloading your pay statements anyway, but please don't estimate. If you had a bonus, put that in if you received the bonus. If you're expecting a bonus and you're in a job, use last year's bonus. Just please don't estimate. You'll put your industry, your job function, if you manage anyone, hours per week. Don't stress about this. I find that a lot of people are not working 40 hours a week anymore, right? I mean, I myself working 60, 70 hours a week. If that's for you, put it. If you are truly working 80 hours a week, put that. It gives context into how busy you are. If you're
Desiree,
self-employed, yes.
quick question. So let's say I receive an offer letter from a company, and it's like however much a year, but my tax form is something different because I didn't start on January 1st. How does that work?
Yes. So you will put what's in your offer letter. If you are looking at, say that we're in July and you're talking about when you were hired in 2023, you can put your the offer letter details. Why I say that? If Rivera ever has a flag, that's kind of the documentation they're going to ask for. They will ask for things like an offer letter. They will, and if you have none or you can't access it anymore for some reason, then they will ask for bank statements. Excellent. Duties and responsibilities. Please don't take what's on your resume. Your resume should be different anyway. Your resume should never be a summary of what you do. It should be a greatest hits of the impact you've made. So please spend some time and give a summary. As an investment banker, I oversee due diligence on tech companies. Like, give them a sense of what you're doing. Reason for leaving, 50 words maximum. This is short and sweet, friends. If it's that you got another offer, you can say that. It's totally fair. Admissions, they are human too. They understand wanting to leave a job for a myriad of reasons. So just put that there. Some more interesting information. The total amount of months full-time post-undergraduate work experience you have. Please use whole numbers and use a calculator. That's how important it is. They use this to see upon matriculation, how experienced will you be? So use the calculator if you need. Often get the question, well, what if I work full-time during undergrad? Doesn't count, friends. You got to read what the school defines as work experience. So this has to be post-undergraduate. If you work during undergrad, you should be putting that maybe even in an optional essay to formulate a bigger picture view, but post-undergraduate. This one's fun. Are you providing a letter of recommendation from your current or most recent supervisor? I got to tell you, it is so common for folks not to be able to ask their current manager because they might risk a bonus or even their job, that they put it in the application. And so say for you, if it's not, say no. If not, please explain. I cannot ask my current supervisor. I will risk my job. That is a completely reasonable statement. Provide an explanation for any 3 gaps or longer. If this applies to you, say what you were doing during that job. In between job 2 and 3, I had a gap of 5 months. During that time, I was interviewing, I did a certification, I studied for the GRE, whatever it is, put that in here. Do you have plans to work for your family business? This is popping up on applications left, right, and center. If you say, yeah, this is just a chance for them to understand, 1, the fuller picture view, and 2, do you have a fallback plan? If you have a family business, maybe you've worked for it, maybe you hope to work for it, put the company name here and please explain either what your experience with that has been to date or what the future plans are. Again, this is getting a fuller picture view. And for those of you who are lucky enough to have a family business, it's a nice way to say, if plan A, B, and C doesn't work out, I've got a family business. Or maybe it's more serious for you. Maybe you actually do only want to work for the family business, but this is a great question. Education is going to be pretty standard. I won't say so much about that. The one thing I do want to point out is they get a lot of questions about GPAs and institutions that they've put information here. I got to tell you, friends, it is so common not to have a 4.0 scale GPA. They know that. When I was at Columbia, I was traveling to India. It was so common to have a GPA out of 10. Admissions knows this. They see institutions all over the place. Do not convert your GPA. Applicants should report their grade point average, exactly how it appears on their transcript. And so if you have a 7.8, that's what you'll put in. If you have no GPA at all, you'll put 0. And then just rounding it out, professional credentials received, CFA, CPA, non-degree certificates. So this could even be if you have a 6 Sigma certification, put that in here. Extracurriculars, when it loads. I'll start talking about it. So Columbia allows you to put 3 activities while you were an undergrad and 3 activities post-grad. This is them getting a sense for how you spend your time. What kind of student are you? If you were very involved during undergrad, well, chances are you might be very involved at Columbia. And Columbia really, as with every school, wants people to be involved. So when you hit activity, what the organization name was, what your role was, when you participated, description of participation. Please use the time to say what your impact was. If you were a part of a fraternity or a dance team, well, did you grow the members? Did you support the members? How many members? Please make sure that you're highlighting your impact here. So again, that's 3 during undergrad, 3 postgrad. How do you choose? The ones where you've had the most impact, the ones that you're most proud of, the ones where you were the most involved. Hobbies. The way that I define hobbies instead of like extracurricular activities is maybe you love needle pointing. I've even seen crazy extracurriculars like pole dancing or rollerblading. If it's not part of like a formal organization, that becomes a little bit of a hobby. Maybe you like to read sci-fi. Put your hobbies in. I've even seen like video gaming. Put what, brings you joy. Let's go to essays. So Columbia has a new short answer this year. I'll get to that in a second, but short answer, they've had this. When I was there, you had something like 150 characters, and then it was 75 characters. We're at 50 characters. It's very short. This needs to be so short. It does not have to be grammatically correct. So transition into like tech, investment, banking. That's so short. I still have 11 characters, but whatever it is for you, it's just a way for them to quickly glance at it and situate. Okay, what is this person trying to do? You will expand on it in your first main essay. The new one, how do you plan to spend the summer after the first year of MBA? If it's an internship, include target industries or functions. And so if up here you wanted to go into investment banking, well, internship at JP Morgan on the tech team. If you have more information than that, please put it, but this is sort of the structure of how quickly you're going to type this out. All right. Essay 1 and Essay 2. I think GMAT Club is going to have an essay walkthrough, so I won't go too in depth, but for the first essay, we have a clear sense of your professional path to date. What are your career goals over the next 3 to 5 years? And what is your long-term job? You need to hit all the parts of the question. This is very similar to a lot of schools' essays. This is a tried and true standard goals essay. You need to situate. If you're a transitioner, why the transition? If you're continuing in your industry, why, how? This is for them to understand, do you have the ability to transition? Have you done the research? If you're transitioning to something different, what do you know about the industry? What's driving the industry to change? Did you do research? Sometimes solidifying it with metrics makes sense. You need to convince the AdCom that you have a plan, that you're well researched, because they know it is so normal to go to business school and change. 50% of people do. So if you are able to formulate a very strong argument for your career, even now without the MBA, that if you do change, you can get back on track. So this essay, very, very important, maximum 500 words. It is a document upload. If your essay is 505 words, that's okay, but please don't go 550, 600, etc. Essay 2. The Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership is a co-curricular program. So they've asked, the first question was the same for a couple of years. Describe a time or a situation where you needed to utilize one of the 5 skills, which are up here, friends, just one of the 5, and the actions you took. So this is a star format question. Understand where you've been inclusive. Now, the change this year, my spidey sense is that they didn't get quite the quality of essays they might have wanted because, people have different lived experiences. Maybe there isn't a time where someone has mitigated bias and prejudice or addressed systemic equality. So they've opened it up. Alternatively, share a specific example of how you made a team more collaborative or fostered a greater sense of community within an organization. Everyone should be able to answer that. But my guidance for this is go specific, star format, situation, task, action, result. Bring it up, not maybe what you learned in that situation. Maybe you want to bring it across, the lessons that you carry now. 250 words, by the way, it's short. Essay 3. So this has been the essay for many years with one change. How will you co-create your optimal MBA experience at CBS across academics, culture, and professionally? My spidey sense tells me that potentially some applicants were just talking about academics or just talking about culturally, clubs and fun things. They put the word co-create. This is a signal to you that you need to talk to across your experience, professional, cultural, academic. How are you going to enjoy or maybe even give back to the Columbia community? So please take heed of the word co-create. Optional essay, I would say probably about 30% of folks write an optional essay, and it's really a chance for you not to expand on prior essays, but give them information about something that can't be covered elsewhere. What might that be? Maybe there were a less than stellar academic performance in your undergraduate program. Maybe you had to work to support yourself during undergrad. Maybe your job is so intense right now that you just don't have a lot of extracurriculars. This is a chance for you to answer potentially unanswered questions. There were times where I would read an application and I'd say, well, they didn't even address this. What's going on here? I wish they had done the optional essay. Really, they gave you 500 words. Please don't give them 500 words. An optional essay can be done in a sentence. I'm going to address my undergraduate GPA. I didn't do so well. I wasn't mature enough. Sometimes that's completely all that's needed. Again, don't give them 500 words. Test scores, well, loads. So Columbia is lovely, and then it gives you a lot of flexibility. GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment. Executive assessment is great. You should choose the test that highlights your abilities. There are times where applicants will do 2 or even 3 of these tests. You don't do 3. But if you're not performing well on the GMAT, you can try the GRE. They're open to that. What the biggest sort of pitfall in my mind is sometimes people will, let's pretend you took the GRE 3 times, and the first 2, you didn't love your score. Please submit all 3 scores. And you might say, Kelsey, what are you talking about? When somebody takes the time and the effort to take a test multiple times, it shows how determined you are, how hardworking you are. They don't care about any other score except for your top 1. It will not work against you, promise. Please submit all of your test scores. When I was at Columbia, one of the biggest reasons someone was waitlisted was that they only took a test once. And so it looked like, maybe they weren't taking it seriously. What if they took it one more time? But if you report all of your scores, you kind of get ahead of that. You tell a story of how determined you are. Anyway. So down here, just like many, many schools, they're asking you to self-report. So you'll just upload that, take a screenshot, et cetera, upload that here. It is only if you're admitted will you send the official scores. And just highlighting this, how many times have you taken it? If it's 3, put 3. Recommendation. So Columbia only wants 1. I hope all schools go to just 1. But anyway, so when you add your recommender, you'll put in their details, et cetera, et cetera. Here, I get a question like this all the time. Do you waive your right? Waive your right. It's essentially signaling to them that if you're admitted or not admitted, you're not going to come back to admissions and say, hey, I want to see my, what they wrote about me. It's not going to work against you if you don't waive your right, but 99% of people do waive their right. Just an operational note, when you put this in, their email, their information, as soon as you hit send to recommender, this button here, it's going to send them an email. So don't put this information in until you've secured that they're going to write for you and they're prepared to write for you, or else this is just going to languish in their inbox. Financing your MBA. So I love that Columbia does this. They're already saying, hey, please think about this. And they've got a calculator, they got information. Let's walk through this. So they're estimating that the first year's cost is $133,000. That is yes, it is a high sticker price, but hopefully you knew that before I just told you that. There's a couple of boxes. Would you like to be considered for merit scholarships? Well, everyone does, so hit yes. Do you intend to apply for need-based institutional funding? So essentially, will you go through the financial aid process at Columbia? Anybody can go through it. It doesn't mean that you're going to be given need-based. They really want to see what the entire class is, what the income levels are looking like. So, but if you do want to, you can hit yes. And this is when they tell you, we'll give you instructions if you're invited to interview. Do you plan on utilizing loans? Almost everybody does. Estimate the amount that you'll borrow. You are not beholden to this information. Columbia is just signaling to you, we really want you to think about this beforehand, right? You should not start thinking about this if and when you're admitted, because you got to be prepared to hit the ground running. The worst thing would be to be admitted to your dream school and you don't qualify for loan. So anyway, this is them saying, please, please, please think about this. Please estimate the amount you'll be contributing, family, self. You're not beholden to this. Again, they're trying to gather information. Where is the money coming from? Will your company be sponsoring your MBA? If you are so lucky to have that, you'll hit yes, and you'll enter in the information. Sometimes you're not quite sure. And I love that they give you that option. I anticipate, but I don't know. So again, put that in. Have you secured external scholarships or fellowships? Let's say yes. Organization name, how much money? I find that this is so underutilized. There's a lot of money sitting out there from nonprofit institutions, your undergrad institutions. I find that maybe 5% of people think about this. So this is just the CBS admissions session, explore external scholarships, other funding agencies, etc. So all of this comes down to, what are your estimated remaining costs? Is there a gap in the amount that you've planned for, that might get paid for, that you've gotten external scholarships? What's the gap? None of this is set in stone. They understand that life happens, things change. But again, this is just for them to say, are you thinking about it? If it comes back and things are meaningfully changed, don't stress. They've got a great financial aid team, a great admissions team that will walk you through. Coming up in the rear, we've got the community contract. A lot of schools have this. This is essentially saying, as a lifelong member, I will commit myself to honorable and professional conduct in and outside the classroom. And this is just saying, please be a nice person. Please be a good person. So they're forcing your hand to acknowledge this in order to actually submit. If we go through a review, it will tell you if you're missing any parts of your application, which is, kind of nice, but most do this. Application fee. If you are military, you can reach out and contact the admissions to hopefully get a fee waiver. And I think that's it. And hopefully we've got a lot of questions in the Q&A box.
Yes, we do. Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey. Okay, so for everyone in the audience, I think we have around 200 of you guys. But the top upvoted question only has 17 upvotes. So please get in that Q&A session and vote up some questions for us. In the meantime, Kelsey, if you wouldn't mind us starting on some of the top upvoted ones right now.
Great.
All right, sounds great. Okay, so the first one is from Sutapa, and they ask, can you tell us briefly about applying in R1 versus R2? Also, are there any scholarship opportunities for international applicants applying in R2, or maybe they're all gone in R1?
They're not all gone in R1. So Columbia, Columbia's under new leadership. They did things a little differently last year. So I can definitely comment on that. But the first, round one, round two. Net, it's mostly the same, but if you're prepared for round one, please submit round one. Again, apply when you're ready, et cetera, et cetera. But round one they're starting with a blank slate, right? They're really crafting the class. They're really excited about people who are excited about Columbia, have talked to people, attended events. They're forming the basis of their class. Round two, the stats are really negligible. If you are not ready until round two, don't stress about it. Just apply in round two. What I mentioned, they did things differently. Scholarships weren't announced until really like January, February last year. So the folks that were admitted in round one didn't hear about scholarships. And so they're sort of just sitting there saying, well, what kind of money am I getting? Yes, they are definitely earmarking money for round two. Money can even come out in round three. So yes, no difference really between round one and round two. But I tell my folks, apply in round one if you absolutely can, just because started the class. Yes, there are scholarship opportunities in all rounds.
Awesome. Cool. The next question I think is a very short one. Tyler just wants to ask, are there any application fee waivers?
There are. So even in the application, they've got that. I'll be honest, they don't give a lot of them. I just had a client actually text me right now. She was unable to secure one. You could try. The worst, always ask. The worst thing that happens is no, and it's just another $250. But for current military, application fee waivers.
And then I believe also consortium, possibly. Okay, awesome.
Yes, consortium. Love the consortium.
Cool. And then, all right, we have a question from Rahul, and he asks, what are the chances of scholarship for someone having an average GMAT score?
Oh, Rahul, this is such a hard question to answer. I'm going to answer it, but I don't know if you'll like my answer. It depends. So Columbia, as well as other schools, have different flavors of merit scholarships. Sometimes they're just buckets of money for someone who's very strong, but sometimes they're industry specific, right? They have maybe it might be the Paul Milstein, but for like real estate. And so having an average GMAT score doesn't take you out of the running, but the GMAT is going to be one of those tools that they use to try to coax someone over to Columbia. Hey, they're probably admitted to a lot of schools. How can we win them over? And so merit scholarships are a really nice way to do that. So GMAT score, it's unfortunately a significant part of that, but that is not always the case. I had a client last year who had a 308 GRE, and she received a hefty scholarship from Columbia and from Tuck. So test scores are not everything. It really is the whole package, your experience, how your recommenders write about you. But it doesn't, if you have an average GMAT or any score, it doesn't help your chances.
Along the lines of a scholarship, is there a way to negotiate your scholarship at all?
Every school has like a different process. This is my take. If you don't ask, you don't get it. Certain schools like Wharton last year was like, nope, all decisions are final, but at least you asked. I have seen Columbia try to negotiate last year. Many folks were not successful, but if you don't ask, you don't get it. There are times where they will come back where you had no money before. Maybe now you have 20, 30, 40, $50,000. So in some circumstances, they will.
Awesome. Cool. All right, just a heads up to the crowd that we're getting into some of the lesser upvoted questions. So right now, if you go in and upvote, you can really change what we get to see in the last 8 minutes of this Q&A session. All right, so the next question is from Aylin Liu. They ask, when I go to an admissions event in person, if I get a chance to speak with the admissions officer one-on-one, what do people usually speak with them about? And am I supposed to hand them my resume?
Please don't hand them your resume, friends. No. When you go to an event, the best thing that you can do is open your ears and be curious. It is not a chance for you to stand out in some way. That's not your goal. Just listen. Because the things that you hear, maybe you hear about a new program or a new class and you're going to write about that. Do not go in saying, I'm going to make an impression, because the worst thing, you will come off and you will give them cause for concern to say this person is not going to be a good community fit. Go there, be nice, be respectful, talk to people, ask genuine questions. But what are you supposed to ask about? You're not supposed to ask about anything. Ask what's genuine to you, because this is a chance for you to like really see if you're fit, not just at Columbia, but any schools. Am I actually going to be happy at this program? So that's, be nice, be curious, be genuine.
All right. Cool. Thanks so much. And then the next question is from Jivesh. Sorry for pronunciations. And they ask, how should we cover up mediocre GPA? This was really interesting to me because I applied to Columbia with a 3.2.
Javesh, you can't cover it up, but I think you're asking how do I mitigate it. So there is no mitigating it necessarily. Like, you will still put in whatever your GPA is. And so Alan put in 3.2. But there are ways to either demonstrate or contextualize your undergraduate performance. Maybe there were circumstances that made it really challenging for you to do well in school. Optional essay, short and sweet. Other ways to do it are to have a really good test score or to take additional courses. There are programs like MBA math. You can take an accounting course, a stats course. Use everything you can to demonstrate that, hey, maybe when I was a very, very young adult, I wasn't prepared and I didn't do so well, but look at me now. I was able to take a course on top of my full-time job. All of these things, all of these different pieces that come together may bolster their ability to say, this person's going to be just fine during the rigorous academics.
Awesome. I hope that answered your question. All right, from Doyen Solo, sorry. um, they ask, can one submit a higher GRE GMAT score after the application has been submitted? If
Oh, great
yes, is
question.
there a deadline?
Great question. So every school sort of like changes. In my time when I was at Columbia, you had up to 6 weeks to retake the test, and we would hold you like in purgatory. That's not the case anymore. Columbia's official stance looking at the application is they will not consider test scores after the deadline. Now, if you miraculously walk out with a really strong test score, you can always email them. Their response is going to be a respectful and curt, we can't guarantee that this is going to be reviewed, which is fair, right? They have a deadline for a reason. That being said, you can try, but it really behooves you to finish up your testing before the application deadline.
Awesome. Cool. Then we have a question from Rahul, and they ask, I've done an MBA during COVID, and even though it was a regular program, it became an online program due to lockdown, and they didn't get the exposure and experience they were looking for. Is this an automatic reject from CBS because they've already done an MBA, or?
No, actually. So schools, again, they're human too. There's actually a fair amount of folks who have completed an MBA, but feel like they need another one, or they need Columbia's, for example. And so they're very open to folks who already have an MBA. I would absolutely address that in an optional essay. It is not an automatic reject at all. They will absolutely review your application. There are very good reasons for someone wanting to get an additional MBA.
Awesome. Cool. This is answered. Then Tanvir asks, from your experience, how open are the top schools to 8 to 10 years of experience, including people management experience? Does it have to be direct reports, or the people, or I guess this looks like a second question. Also for management experience in the job section, does it have to be direct reports or the people you led in projects or assignments?
Oh, interesting. So a two-parter. How open are top schools at 8 to 10? It's about the average. So I think what my advice is like you have to make the argument for why an MBA and why now, right? Are you transitioning? Well, there's a really good reason for why. Are you trying to climb? You always it's not a risk, but some programs do have an executive MBA, and maybe they feel like that's better, and they might approach you with that conversation. It's rare it happens, but they are open to it, but you have to make the case for why now. You're not at a disadvantage. Folks with more years of experience are often, sometimes I want to see that maybe they're going to give back to their classmates, right? Maybe, for example, you're in consulting. Well, maybe you're going to help your peers who are transitioning to consulting. How are you going to give back to the community? Because you have more years of experience? Well, there's a really nice answer. And then the second one, is it direct reports, indirect reports? Look at how the school phrases it. In Columbia's, it's like indirect / direct. And there's a way for you to actually expand on your responsibilities. Do that there. Like, I indirectly manage 100 people on these projects, and I've had this impact. So use the boxes to your advantage to give that additional context.
Awesome. Cool. So it is 11:43. Heads up. So we only have 2 minutes left. So only 1 or 2 more questions to the audience. Okay. So possibly last or second to last question. Aditya asks, if he quits from his current organization to learn and enhance new skills, would it affect his application strength?
It can. I'm not going to mince words here. It can. You're up against thousands of other people who are applying and have a full-time job, and on top of that full-time job are doing organizations and extracurricular activities. It would be my advice that you explain why you felt you needed to quit your job in order to do those things. So yes, you could have a weaker application because of it.
Awesome. Cool. And then I think we have time for one more.
Excellent.
So from Rohan Gupta asks, how to mention ESOPs? I imagine that's employee stock options as part of your annual salary.
If there's a box for it. Columbia's really does not. You don't include it. There are times where someone says, oh, I make $1 million. And then it turns out it's stock options. Well, congratulations, number one. Two, that does not count. It's not real money until you cash ESOPs out. It's not real money. You can put that in an optional essay if you really think it bolsters how much you've been rewarded for your work, but do not calculate ESOPs in your salary, please.
All right. I think that was a very clear answer. Thank you so much, Kelsey. All right. That's the end of our session. Once again, this is Kelsey Kephart, founder of Embark MBA, a former Columbia Business School admissions officer. And if you work with her, there's no staff. It's directly to Kelsey, and you'll have a line to a former Columbia Business School admissions officer.
Thank you, Alan. You did a great job. Yay.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, and I hope to see you guys in another session very soon.
Thanks, everyone.